Suspected Syrian militants have reportedly been detained in Turkey with a cylinder of highly poisonous sarin gas found in their possession. Those arrested are believed to be members of the Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Nusra Front. Earlier this month, UN investigators voiced suspicion the nerve agent was being used by opposition fighters. Moscow is concerned the use of chemical weapons could prompt foreign military intervention in Syria. RT's Middle East correspondent Paula Slier has the details.
The group was seized in southern Turkey, and that is according to local media reports. The media also saying that they carried a 2-kilogram cylinder with the nerve agent sarin. Now, Turkish authorities haven't yet commented on this report, and we are waiting to hear from them. Britain, the United States and France in the past have said that they believe it is Assad, however, that is using chemical weapons, but they haven't been able to produce any kind of evidence to prove this. The British government has written to the United Nations Ban Ki-moon alleging 3 new incidents of chemical use by Assad's forces, and at the same time the French government says that it is testing samples that were smuggled out by journalists. But all of this is hearsay at the moment, whereas on the other hand we have, and here what we're seeing is fighters from the Al-Nusra Front allied with the Syrian rebels caught with the sarin nerve agent gas. It is important also to point out and remind our viewers that the United Nations did launch an independent investigation, and what that investigation concluded was that there were signs that rebels have been using the sarin nerve agent. In another investigation that was initiated by the UN chief Ban Ki-moon, that was criticized by Damascus because they said that what Ban Ki-moon was hoping to do was to investigate every site in Syria. And the Syrians said it reminded them of the Iraqi-style investigation into weapons of mass destruction. The use of chemical weapons is banned under international law, and there are concerns by many people that the arguments that they are being used could trigger some kind of international intervention.
Reports of sarin gas found in rebels' possessions seems to be falling on deaf ears in the West. Author and historian Gerald Horne told us earlier not even the threat of chemical weapon use can shake its support for the Syrian opposition.
If the Syrian government had been caught with sarin gas, we would have heard war whoops from Washington, London, and Paris. But of course, this should not come as a surprise to any who've been paying attention. We know that the internationally respected civil servant Carla Del Ponte had basically made a similar discovery and revelation on behalf of the United Nations just weeks ago, which then was refuted by the White House. We also know that in recent days, Senator John McCain of Arizona entered Syria illegally, and news reports indicate that he consulted with the White House before entering Syria. This is a very dangerous turn of events. It's clear that there are those in Washington who would like to intervene in Syria on behalf of the rebels, which is quite curious since Al-Nusra Front, which has been designated as a terrorist organization by Washington, is at the tip of the spear in the opposition against President al-Assad.
Meanwhile, Syria's main opposition group, the Syrian National Coalition, says it will not participate in the international peace conference proposed by Russia and the US. The group cited Hezbollah and Iranian forces fighting alongside the Syrian military as the reason for rejecting the meeting. This as reports emerged that a US and British citizen have been killed in Syria while fighting for the rebels. RT's Igor Piskunov takes a look now at the Syrian opposition and those who might be armed on its behalf.
Since Britain and France blocked attempts to extend the EU embargo on supplying arms to the Syrian rebels, there have been growing fears that the weapons could end up in the wrong hands, and this is why. The Syrian opposition is made up of many divided and often competing factions, and currently there's no force that can represent it as a whole. There's the Syrian National Council, the National Coalition for Syrian Revolutionary and Opposition Forces, the Supreme Military Council, the Free Syrian Army, the National Coordination Committee, the Jabhat al-Nusra, the Farouk Brigade, and many more. And I'd like to point out that only the NCC says it's open to dialogue with the authorities, while all the others have officially proclaimed their goal is to topple the regime. The only difference being how extreme their approaches are. And here is where these two rebel groups stand out. Jabhat al-Nusra is officially recognized as a terror organization by the US. It's also known for its links to Al-Qaeda and for being among the most highly trained rebel forces currently on the ground in Syria. And the Farouk Brigade, perhaps just as notorious after one of its leading commanders was shown shown eating the body parts of a dead Syrian soldier on video. But despite warnings raised by international human rights groups, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, the rebels have been receiving weapons for some time now. According to Western media reports, the rebels have received 160 plane loads of arms shipments from Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, via Turkey, and then with the cargo smuggled across the border here with Syria. But no matter which rebel group the arms may be destined for, it's also widely recognized that they usually end up in the hands of the best trained and most radical brigades.
We've got more on the developments in and around Syria on our website. And also there, some interesting opinion in our op-ed section. One of the latest entries compares the waves of regime changes in the Arab world with the plot of an Agatha Christie novel. All that on RT.com.